Welcome back, everybody. So I've got the heads on the engine. Now I want to talk to you. I wanted to talk to you about this a little bit. I did a video on these gaskets before. Now with the Vortec heads, what you have is 4 bolts on each head. There's nothing in the middle here. Now this is the gasket you want for this. This is a Velcro MS 98000T as in Tom. You can pause it and look at that if you want. And what this is an all steel gasket. So the gaskets that come with from the factory for the Vortec heads are basically like this. They're plastic. And there's no metal in it, it's just plastic. There are some metal rings here, but these, listen you guys, these gaskets are garbage. So what I would recommend is you throw these in the trash and you go with this steel gasket. I've done a bunch of these heads now with this gasket and I've never had any trouble with them. So when installing the intake, make sure you get this gasket from Velcro. Now, as far as the gaskets that go on the ends here, I want to talk to you about installing the intake a little bit. I figured I'd do this since I'm putting it on. They do have end gaskets, the rubber gaskets that go on the ends of the intake here. What you need to do is you also need to take those and throw them in the trash, because if the heads have been surfaced or the block's been surfaced, the intake is not going to sit right on this gasket. Sometimes this end gasket can actually hold the intake up off of here and it causes a problem. What you want to do is you want to take a bead of silicone and run a bead of silicone down the ends here. We also, now I put silicone sealer on the block around the water jackets. The water jackets are the 4 corners, and you also want to put that on top. Don't put any silicone here by the intakes because the intake could just suck that silicone right into the intake port, and they don't really have any trouble. We just want a little bit here and then run it down right in this corner here. Make sure you run a little bit of silicone right there, and the same thing on the other side. Little silicone right there, and I did that on the bottom side of the gasket as well, and then just around the 4 water jackets. Now I'll get the back ones too. I'll do all 4 of these. Alright, so I've got all 4 corners with silicone around the water ports, top and bottom of the gasket, and now I'm going to take my silicone and I'm going to run a big thick bead of silicone right here. You can use RTV gray or RTV black, either one works. So we just want to run and make sure you get a thick enough bead here that it's gonna take up that space. You want that silicone bead about a 1/4 of an inch high, about a 1/4 inch tall stream of silicone all the way across. Make sure it goes all the way across right there. So now we've got plenty of silicone that's going to seal this up, kind of blend it in here. And you're going to do the same thing in the back. I'm going to take our tube of silicone and we're going to run it right across the back. Make sure you don't get this into that oil hole there. You might want to put a sensor or a plug, something in that hole, if you don't feel comfortable doing this. I've done this enough times I can avoid it. So you want that bead of silicone on the front and the back just like this, a big thick bead. And then we're going to take our intake and we're going to set it straight down on there. In all the years I've been installing intakes on small block Chevys, Fords, even big block Chevys and Fords, I've used silicone for most of those years and I've never had an issue with these leaking in the front and the back. Now, if what you'll notice is the GM and even the Ford stuff, when they put the rubber gaskets in there, after the engine gets, mileage on it, gets up in age, these front and these back gaskets always leak. You get the steel gaskets on here, the steel gaskets with the rubber overlay, the neoprene overlay, all four corners with the silicone, front and back. Put your intake straight down on there, and you will never have a leak. This thing will seal up just like it's supposed to with no problems. Okay, so this is our Vortec intake, guys, and again, it's got the 4 bolts coming up. We got studs in here. So we're just going to take our intake now. The studs acts as guides, and we're just going to set the intake over the studs and let it gently sit right down on there. Now, another word of caution I would give you on these intakes, the torque on these intakes is really light. It's almost so light it's hard to believe. It's about 15 foot-pounds. One thing you don't want to do is over torque these intakes. That's going to cause you a problem. So we want to go ahead and I'll get all the nuts on here. Get my one last stud in, and then I'll show you the torque sequence on this thing. Guys, so another thing that I would advise you, if you ever use an aluminum intake manifold, always make sure you put flat washers under the bolts or the nuts. Now the torque sequence it's 15 foot-pounds, and the torque sequence is a crisscross pattern from the center to the outer bolts. And there's only 8 of them, so it doesn't take that long. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert that 15 foot-pounds to inch-pounds. It's a lot easier if you use an inch-pound torque wrench. If you don't have an inch-pound torque wrench, I recommend you get one, because it can be pretty hard to do even with a 1/2-inch drive, or I'm sorry, 3/8 drive foot-pound torque wrench. It's pretty hard to get it down to 15 foot-pounds. So if we take 15 foot-pounds and we divide or we multiply it by 12, that tells us how many inch-pounds we need. So you just got to go 12 times 15. 12 times 15 is 180 inch-pounds. So there's 175, 180 inch-pounds. Okay, so we're going to start here. Now what you want to do is run all these down first. I'm not going to go to full torque. I'm going to go in the sequence. So we're going to go in a crisscross pattern from here to here, and then we're going to go from here to here. Okay, so I'm going to go back up here. And I'm just snugging these up yet. I'm not torquing them. Just run them all down. And if you want, you can set this for like 130 inch-pounds and then go to 180. Okay, then we're going to come up here, opposite where we were. It's a crisscross pattern. Now we're going to go back opposite in the back side. And again, I'm not full torque. Come straight across, and then we're going to go diagonally up to that last one in the front, right up this way. So it's basically just a crisscross pattern. You got to pull it down evenly from side to side. All right, now I'm going to go back here and I'm going to start. It doesn't matter which side you start on, but I'm going to go to the full 15 foot-pounds. Okay, right there. There it is. Now I'm going to go diagonally across back here. And you can see as you pull this, start pulling these down, you can see that silicone start to squish out of the front and the back. That's what you want. You want that gap completely covered. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to go straight across to this side, and then we'll go diagonally back up to that side. There it is. Crisscross back up here. And now, once this one's torqued, we've got all the inner bolts torqued. Okay, there it is. Now I'm going to go crisscross back to the very back one back here. I'm going to go straight up on this side. Then I'm going to go diagonally to the back side. There it is, and straight up to the last one in the front. And that's it. That is your torque pattern. Now, another thing I would advise you is go back over them, start again, and do it again. Make sure that, because sometimes these will loosen up. See, I went a little bit. Now I'm going to go in the crisscross pattern. Yep, that one loosened up. Come up here. That's good. That's good. I'm going to go diagonally to the front, straight across, and the outer ones are usually tight. These outer ones, they're torqued. So now I go and I check them all. If they're all torqued, you don't really have to go in the pattern. We're just double checking that they're torqued, and they are. See, now that one came loose. What happens is these studs can stretch a little, the gasket can compress. So you just got to go over this a few times and make sure that the manifold hasn't settled or the gasket hasn't compressed. And just make sure that you got that 15 foot-pounds on every one of these. Okay, so now, if you notice in the front here, the gasket, the silicone has all squished out. Just leave it there for now. Same thing in the back. So our manifold is now installed. That's how you want to do it. Make sure you follow the torque procedure, and you also follow the spec for these. The spec is real low on these Vortecs. One thing I know for sure, and I've seen guys do it, if you over tighten these Vortec type intakes, the gasket will leak almost every time. So stick with the manufacturer's torque rating and you'll be okay.